Michiel, good to see you again. We're now going to look at what we call stage 3. And this concerns 2 buildings, which we refer to as Medical 2. It's our second potential medical acquisition. And we've already gone through the initial pass of due diligence. We've submitted the LOI, we've paid the down payment, and we're now going to do the more detailed due diligence to figure out, is this one we really want to go ahead with? Is that a good summary?
Very good, thank you. Thank you, Dolph.
Take us through the process.
Yeah, so I think just at a high level, once we have received the signed letter of intent, we obviously ask the sellers to give us all the information on this. And you will not believe how much information we get. We really look under the hood, okay? We look at the tax information, the actual rates and taxes. We look at the maintenance schedules. We even ask for the manual of the generator. We even ask for the manuals of the air conditioning. So from that perspective, we really go to town. We've got about 140 points that we look at. So when you look at a building, not only just at the structure of the building, we actually measure that it says how many square foot it is. So we actually do the actual measurements. We go through that whole process of also checking that the zoning was done correctly. We pull the actual building plans and make sure that whatever they have built is what they actually have built. So this process is what we call the due diligence process, and in this specific case we go through all of these things. Maybe just a quick one, it's actually 3 buildings, sorry for that. So we're going through all 3 buildings on that. And that process is now typically taking about 30 to 40 days. And this brings me to the high-level investor process. So from an invest or let's call it a landlord perspective, we do the due diligence. And then at the same time, we're actually applying for finance to build this building or to buy this building. And the actual financiers do a parallel due diligence, because they obviously don't want to lend money to a building that it doesn't make sense. So we actually do 2 due diligence at the same time. And then further to that, we also are setting up the legal entities that will house these investments. And then once we about, let's call it a third way into this due diligence, and we found most of the stuff are in order, we actually release the investment to the investors, and we start raising the money, meaning that the investors can invest in this investment product, and we keep them up to date should they be interested as we progress. So we have different versions of the calculations as we continue, and obviously once the due diligence process has been concluded, we come to a final calculation, which is our master calculation. And I present that to yourself and Annie and Scott on the investment committee, and then we discuss this building. If we found something special in the due diligence, something that maybe not a deal breaker but maybe cost money, we can always renegotiate with the seller. If it's something really untowards that we don't want to accept, we obviously will cancel the deal and then simply return the money for the investors. However, at this point in time, there's been so many checks done that it's really become a formality that we want to just thoroughly do through, and then we release the investment for actual buying purposes, and we call that process the closing process, meaning that all the investors put their money into the actual project escrow account. We don't actually touch their money at all. They are dealt with by the professional escrow persons that keep these accounts, and that money goes from that account directly to the closing attorney's account, which will then distribute the funds at the point where the buildings are transferred from the seller into our, meaning Wealth Migrate LLC, in which we hold these properties, and then it's an actual formal investment.
Right. So this really, for me, this is the exciting phase. This is where we already know we're interested. It's met the first due diligence phase criteria, if you like. We've now submitted the LOI, down payment. We're now going through the nitty-gritty with a fine-tooth comb. We're checking that all the things that we expect to be there are there, and all the things that we don't want to be there are not there. I'm sure with big buildings, there are always some things where you think, well, the air conditioning plant on this roof is a little older than we'd expect, but it may not be a deal breaker. We may have to allow for it in the budget.
Correct.
Right.
That is correct. Yeah.
So this is the exciting phase, because it's at that moment when you say, yes, we want to go ahead with this, that's when you can release it to our investing public, if you like, our investors, and that's the exciting phase. There's only one phase really more exciting than that, and we'll come to that shortly, but that's phase 4, when it's already bedded and we're ready to make perhaps the first payment to investors.
That is correct.